Yes, yes, Greg.
What up?
Here
what
we
up?
go. Oh, you're official. It's on. Kicking it with Sneaker Steve today,
Pleasure
man.
to be here.
Yeah,
I finally
man.
made it, Mom.
I'm super excited to be here today. I have a great friend and mentor of mine today on the show, Greg Selkoe, former Karmaloop CEO and founder, one of the most successful people I know. Someone that, for me, even having 10 minutes of his time was something very special for me. So for me, it's an honor to have him today on the show, and really for him to talk about not only his success and what he's done to help build Karmaloop, and what the future is of his new company, Wanderset, which I'm a part of as well. So it's really exciting. As a gentleman who has sold over $1 billion in lifetime sales online. We were just talking in the car, and it's 25 to 30% of that sneaker. So you're looking at $300 million in sneaker sales. So to me, just hearing the sheer amount of numbers and volume of sneakers that he sold is someone very important to be here kicking it with Sneaker Steve as a friend, as a mentor, and someone for me to learn from. So Greg Selkoe, CEO, Wanderset, today on Kicking It with Sneaker Steve. And as we were talking about in the car, you know, you've sold over $250 to $300 million in sneakers. It's a huge statement, you know. For me, I've been in the sneaker industry a long time, and there's a lot of people I've known that are very influential in the sneaker business. And I also am a big respecter of numbers, and numbers don't lie. So that amount, that sheer amount of volume of sneakers is something incredible.
Imagine if we just piled all that up on top of one another, man. It'd be a big sneaker pile.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And some of the brands that you had. So today what we'll talk about is a little bit of, you know, how you founded one of the most successful sites in history, which is Karmaloop.com, and then as well Karmaloop TV, and now with your new venture, Wanderset.com, which is an incredible shopping platform. We'll get into it, but first of all, what are some of the, I think, the standout brands in the beginning? Like, how did you get involved with selling sneakers on Karmaloop? And even before that, let's talk about like just what Karmaloop was, just for the audience that maybe not have heard of it, a little bit younger. What was Karmaloop, and give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, so I'll start with like just kind of like what Karmaloop was and how kind of it became what it became, because it started out as basically like I was living home with my parents. I grew up in Boston. I was always into sneaker culture, hip hop, electronic music, graffiti art, b-boying, any alternative culture, punk rock, anything that like that I thought, you know, that I thought was cool. Like, and I think that trend has continued even as today. When you talk about, we've talked about Wanderset before, it's like we always want to just be like, yo, whatever we think is cool, we're never going to be defined by, like, no one's going to tell us. Like, we were selling skinny jeans. We helped kind of make that happen because, like, we were like, oh, those are kind of like cool punk rock look, like that whole skate look that became a hip hop look. Karmaloop helped pioneer that, right? And so Karmaloop was basically just me, like, here's some cool brands. You know, I couldn't find these brands. I lived in a major city like Boston, but there was only one store that sold the stuff. And I was like, shit, this thing called the internet's starting. I'll put some of this stuff, I'll try to find these brands. One of our original brands, which is now big again, obviously, is Kappa. So our first 4 brands were Kappa, 555 Soul, which you know, you remember 555, Gypsies and Thieves, and I think the other one was like, Speedwack.
Wow, and
right.
I had a 555 Soul. There was a, I don't know if you guys sold it, I think you guys did. There was a Sneaker Steve mock zip up in part of the collection.
Yeah,
with
no, I'm sure
Soul.
we had it. Like, I mean, from the, like, I think you and I kind of are the same vintage, you know. I know we only look like 22, 23, but we're actually really very old, decrepit old men. It's just, you know, we live well. But
it's all like cryotherapy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm gonna freeze my head one day. I'll be back in 200 years, and that's when, like, you know, they'll really have hoverboards.
And vintage sneakers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just keep them dead stock.
But basically, like, you know, like I remember even meeting you when you were like, you know, at DC Shoes and all the stuff you're doing. And like, you had the beef and broccoli. I was like, I remember like this dude's got ideas that were, you know, and I think very much in line with kind of how I was thinking about Karmaloop, which is like, it's all about the culture, about the creativity. And it's like, it's about like the mixing and the matching. Like beef and broccoli was a Tim thing, right?
Yeah.
And you took that to DC, like, and that was cool to do that. Like you had the thought to like, why would other people be like, why would you take a Timberland thing and put it in a, because really like the, you know, the sort of cross-pollination amongst all the different sneaker companies, and I think you've seen that now in the future, where that was kind of the pre-collab world days, right? And then you asked, so the first question, like, what was Karmaloop? So Karmaloop was just basically my small little startup website that sold brands that I thought were cool, that turned into this whole social movement, which was really much bigger. It was more about this culture and about, I was really proud of the fact that it was about diversity, about the, we didn't have one, our consumer wasn't made up of one race or even one like genre, punk rock or hip hop or whatever. It was the kid who really liked the, like the Pharrell Williams of the world, who blended everything, right? Pharrell grew up, often talked about how he grew up listening to punk rock and skateboarding and stuff, and people made fun of him for that back in the day, and Guns N' Roses and stuff. It was like, he was sort of the epitome of like the archetype of who this kid was, right? And I think when you look at, kind of like, what we did at Karmaloop was that, obviously that translated into sneakers. And a lot of people don't know that Boston is a sneaker mecca. The sneaker was invented in Boston. And Converse is headquartered there, New Balance is headquartered there, Puma's headquartered there, Reebok's headquartered there, Brooks is headquartered there, Timberland's headquartered there, Saucony's.
Under Armour is going there,
Saucony,
you said?
ASICS is opening a big office there. I think Adidas has a big office there. So only Nike's the only one that doesn't. There's this small footwear brand called Yorks, which is coming up out of Boston.
Yeah.
But the first sneaker brand that we sold was Puma. And Barney Waters, who we were with earlier today, who's now the president of K-Swiss, he basically gave us our first opportunity. And we couldn't open up sneaker accounts online back then. They just wouldn't sell. So if you were an online account, no. And then I just kept begging Puma. Tony Bertone, who a lot of people don't know, Tony like really revitalized that brand. And the story, I don't know if this is true or not, but the story, I believe what happened was Tony was like this young kid. He was working at this store called Alston Beat.
I know
which
Alston
was
Beat,
like had like, kind of like Bug Girl, Caffeine. It was like kind of raver stuff, whatever. Young kid, whatever. Puma had was failing. I think Puma North America had broken off from Puma, the parent company. Basically, he went to like a warehouse in Maine that was full of Puma suedes, like hundreds of them. And he's like, holy shit. He's like, yo, like, you don't know what you have here. And it was like that, and the Beastie Boys and everything, this was in like the 90s, right? Like mid 90s, we're bringing back all those retro suedes from like the B-boy days from the early 80s, right? And I think he was like, yo, let's just Puma put these back out again. Like, I think they started off by like taking just like this dead stock they were sitting on. And like, they gave him a chance, and he single-handedly, like Puma was super hot for a long time.
Wow.
And he became the CMO at Puma for many years, and he really like helped bring that back, the business back to, $1 billion in revenue.
Incredible. And then from there, so now all of a sudden, so you get Puma on board, but in terms of Karmaloop, how did it start? Like, how did you come up with the idea to like just start a website, or how did you really, what is the beginnings of Karmaloop, so people can understand from the humble beginnings to where it went?
Well, I mean, so, it went to over $1 billion in lifetime revenue. It still exists. Unfortunately, obviously we went bankrupt at some point. We'll just forget about that little part of the chapter. But I mean, look, we had 16 years we were just crushing it, and we were a fashion business, and unfortunately fashion businesses come and go and go up and down. And but for many, many years, obviously we dominated the culture, and we dominated. And I think part of the reason is because of where we started from in the very beginning. I always wanted it to be more than just an e-commerce site. I wanted to, we mixed, content, community, and commerce. It was the 3 C's, they called it. But like, we were the 3 C's before that was like a terminology, right? And I think, and we created the term Verge culture, basically. I think it was actually Mike Malbone, to give true credit at Frank 151. Mike, the Malbone brothers, but obviously they did a ton for the culture, great dudes, but like, I really think we helped make Verge culture, put it on the map in a big way, and help really use that terminology. And the idea was convergence culture, the convergence of many different cultures. And Karmaloop, basically, when we started out, we had content on the site, and for an e-commerce site, people were always like, dude, like, I would go to investors and they're like, do you sell clothes or do you write stories? Like, what is it? You know what I mean? And so I think people didn't get that. Now that's like part of the whole thing. And now what we're doing with Wanderset, which is the evolution of that, which is narrative e-commerce, which we've come up with that terminology. That one's mine, Mike. But is basically the concept of like telling the story behind the brand.
Yeah. And now, so from the beginning days, when you started Karmaloop, like how much money did it take to start Karmaloop, or like how difficult was that to like start getting inventory and brands? And then like, so basically like, how did you start it?
Well, first of all, we got people to do stuff on consignment. Okay. Right? So now we're doing stuff at Wanderset where we're doing, dropship models. Yeah. So it was a similar challenge, right? Because I didn't have any money, right? I started with the $26,000 that I had saved up.
Wow.
I lived at home with my parents until I was 30 or 28, something like that, 29. I put every penny I had back into the business. And so a lot of people don't understand as an entrepreneur, like you want a business to succeed, you got to put so I was basically doing everything I could to put every penny back into the business. So, and we got a couple brands to take, and basically our pitch to the brands was very similar to the pitch we have to the brands even with Wanderset, which is like, look, we're more than just an e-commerce site. We're gonna not just throw your clothing on a rack and hope it sells. Yeah. We're gonna tell your brand story.
Wow. So from $26,000, your life savings at that time.
Yeah.
To at one point $165 million in sales.
Like in 1 year, yeah.
In 1 year.
In 2013.
Like how does that feel? Like,
I mean, it felt amazing. It was an amazing experience.
Did you even like fathom that? Like honestly, like that it could even get there?
I mean, anything I do in my life, I always have always wanted to go big and do stuff, So people used to ask me, did I ever think Karmaloop was gonna get that big? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I tried to start a TV channel, right? Like obviously, yes. My some of my ambition was some of my problem is that I'm a very ambitious person, and I expanded too much into too many different areas. Like the sad reality is that the Karmaloop business itself was never suffering. Like even when we filed for bankruptcy, it was still cranking, right? We were still doing $85 million we had no cash, but yet we were still, like we couldn't meet the demand. The bankruptcy was related to bad financial deals I made in terms of borrowing money and things like that. Yeah. And that money was borrowed to do other things, right? And so the core business was still cranking. The core business
was still cranking.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was like, I think when we died, the streetwear kind of died, kind of went with it. But my point is that, so the answer is that, yes, I did want to always go big, and I wasn't surprised when I got there because I always believed in myself that I could get there. However, I definitely learned my lesson in terms of what I want to do now with Wanderset is, do I want to have a Wanderset airline? Probably not, right? You know what I mean? It's like, I was trying to be a virgin to a certain extent, and we were doing a lot of different things at Karmaloop. And, and some of them were successful, and all of them were not necessarily bad ideas. It's just there's a certain amount you can do at one time. And it required a lot of capital to do those things. And it was at a time when I could make a phone call and people would just wire me $5 million. Like, yeah, that's a great idea, Greg, we'll do it. And when people start to tell you your ideas are great and all this stuff, you start to believe your own shit, you can get yourself into trouble, you know what I mean? And so I think, it's a humbling experience to go through what I did. And I think, one of the messages to anyone who's starting a business is like, you got to be measured, and you got to, like, everyone can tell you you're great and whatever, but at the end of the day, you got to like make sure that you don't take your eye off the ball. And so I think that that's one of the important lessons I learned from Karmaloop. And but I mean, it was always, except for the very, very last, sort of year when we were really struggling, it was always just so much fun. I was always having fun. Like the people I spent time with, obviously Kanye West and I tried to buy the business back, like I could, if they had done the deal with Kanye and I, the Karmaloop would still be here now. We had the money, we had the backing, we had Magic Johnson's people backing us. The people who had control, I only owned a very small portion of the business at that point because I had sold a lot of portion of my business off, and so Kanye and I couldn't put the deal together. We had a bunch of other people. Ben Horowitz tried to help me from Andreessen Horowitz, put the deal together. We kept bringing these guys deals. They just didn't want to sell the people who owned the business wanted to keep it basically. So. But I think the people I met, like I said, being on the board of Kanye West Foundation, obviously working with Pharrell, I worked with Pharrell very closely for 2 years. The people like Rocky and Ferg and, Kid Cudi and Kendrick Lamar and Chance and Steve Aoki and a lot of like EDM DJs, Clinton Sparks, all these guys. I mean, we work with these guys, Static Selector, like I saw him on one of the promo videos here. These are guys I worked with, like, a lot of them were coming up at exactly the same time I was. And so I think one of the privileges of working in sneaker culture and in working at Karmaloop was just being able to meet all these interesting, fascinating people and do collaboration projects with them.
Yeah, and now, because when I think about that, $250 million to $300 million in sneakers.
Yeah.
Like, how many pairs is that?
I'm not good at math.
Right? But clearly you are. You're a genius. I'm trying to figure out, like, how many pairs is that?
It's like, a lot of sneakers, man.
Right? Like, if that's
it's like kind of like, in the game shows when they like to, like, hey Jack, can you tell me, like, or like whatever they should, we need to have someone patch in the number from someone should be in the back doing calculations.
If it's 300 million divided by, let's say, an average of, like, let's say $80 a shoe.
Right.
Wow. So,
how much?
3.2 million.
It is 3.2?
Yeah, it's around 3.7. Right. Yeah, it's just
insane.
Millions and millions of pairs of sneakers.
Oh my God! I used to go to the warehouse in Columbus, Ohio, just see boxes and boxes of sneakers. You know what I mean?
Wow! How big was the warehouse?
I mean, it was so big, like you had to take a Segway to walk, like, to go get around. It was huge. It was huge. I mean, there were times we had, coming up on Christmas time, we'd have $15 million worth of clothing in the warehouse.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
And at that point, when you start with $26,000, and now the company's doing $165 million in sales, and you have how many employees?
So I mean, we had probably like 250 in Boston. We had probably like 40 in New York. Then we had like all the warehouse staff and all the people who worked there. I mean, we had a third-party company that ran it, but they were our team.
Yeah.
I'd go visit them and whatever. And then we had an office in Copenhagen that had another 30 or so. So we had Karmaloop Europe. And then we had all these reps and all these kids who were like diehard, like they were almost like part of the company,
Yeah.
I mean, they were affiliates basically, but
yeah.
They were like, we had 200,000 like college kids who like repped Karmaloop.
200,000?
Yeah. And then like, these kids were getting Karmaloop tattoos all the time. People would hit me up with like, my personal cell phone number was on the site. So I was super connected to the audience, I mean, it was crazy. It was.
Now, I remember going to the office and what I remember is that how much freedom and liberty. It's almost like when you think of like these new tech companies now,
yeah.
The Googles, these really fun environments, very eclectic, everyone's just being themselves. That's what I felt Karmaloop was before any of that. Literally, like you created this culture and people were excited and they were just all different walks of life. Literally, it was your customer base was the company.
And so oftentimes we were hiring our customers. They'd hit us up. There'd be people like, yo, I want to work at Karmaloop, whatever. And I'd be like, yeah, just move to Boston and intern and we'll see what happens. And like Carissa Rossi, this girl, she was this diehard chick from Cleveland. She just like showed up. She was like, I'm ready to go. Like worked for free for three months and we hired her. She wound up doing Karmaloop TV stuff. I mean, we had dogs in the office. It was a great environment. I mean, people worked really, really hard. I pushed people really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things I'll do differently. I think with Wanderset, I mean, there was definitely no work-life balance. But I mean, I was 28, 30 years old. Like, we partied together. We hung out together. We, had. I mean, there's events. It was a fun place to work. But it was a little insane too. It was like I mean, I heard it described in some. I think I'd said it, and then it was attributed to someone else. So we put it. It was like kind of like Lord of the Flies to a little bit, just in that it was just like there was not a ton of middle management. It was like me, and then there was all these crazy kids and stuff, and it created this incredible, creative environment that produced a lot of stuff. But there was definitely things like with the new business that I want to make sure that we have more structure and stuff.
Got
like
it.
that. Like look, I think you have to always be critical of like, you know, yourself, and like, you know, obviously there was a lot of things we did right and a lot of things, but I think the culture and the ability, think about the people like Frank the Butcher and like the guys who started Bodega, both started at Karmaloop. They met through Karmaloop.
Wow.
You know, Danica, and who's at Converse, Al Haney, who's the designer at Converse, whose family originally, the guy whose family, whose great-great-grandfather started Converse, worked at Karmaloop, and he's like, his family sold Converse when it was still making tires.
Just tires.
It wasn't even a sneaker company. He doesn't have like that kind of money. Like, we went to high school together.
Wow.
Like he's got like the Converse lineage, but not the Converse money. He works at Converse now. Like, I don't know if he's even told people at Converse. He probably has. He's such a quiet dude. But, you know, so many people at every major sneaker company right now, there's someone who worked at Karmaloop, for sure.
That's incredible. And what were some of like the major collabs that you did? I know that that was a big thing for you guys, bringing the sneaker companies. I know like what you're doing there. Like, what were some of those big collaborations?
Other than Nike, we did a collab with every major sneaker company, Adidas, Reebok. We did a bunch of collabs with Reebok. We did like with Supra, we did something called the Banana Supra, which was this just all yellow Supra. We sold 5,000 pairs of that.
Wow.
We did 2 Pumas. We did like we did the Freedom Trail New Balance, and then we did like something for the Boston Marathon New Balance. So I mean, we did it. Every major sneaker company, as I said, we did a collab shoe with, other than Nike.
And do you think it was easier for you guys because you were based in Boston, so it was kind of like your backyard?
Yeah.
Just because all the sneaker companies are there?
Yeah, I mean, it was easy just to show up, and like we would always go through and say what's up to people, and like, you know, like Matt Ting, you know, who's at Adidas now, he was one of the homies. A lot of the people, this guy John Franklin that was at New Balance, a lot of the people who were basically like you know, kind of like designers and whatever, they would come hang out at the Karmaloop office after work.
Yeah. And now, what are some of the lessons that you've even taken from that sneaker business then? Like selling sneakers online back then to like where you see selling sneakers online now?
Well, I mean, like, look, Wanderset out of the gate has had incredible success, right? Like, it just obviously like you know, I mean, it's been amazing. Obviously, a lot of it's been former Karmaloop people coming back and showing love, but lots of new people. Footwear has been like huge for us. We've been selling mad amounts of sneakers. Like, I mean, sneaker culture is as big as it's ever been and getting bigger all the time. You know, we did the podcast this morning with K-Swiss, and they're talking about like their whole angle is entrepreneurship, and the CEOs wear sneakers, right? Like, everyone wears sneakers. One of our investors, this dude from Triangle Capital, very, very straight-laced guy, great dresser, but he wears like Hermes suits and stuff. Hit me up, like, what sneakers look good with a suit, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, just yesterday, right?
Yeah.
These Del Toro shoes I picked out for him. Like, the Del Toros are like, no, we have some really cool, like, some really cool brands, like Brand Voyage and like, Grand Voyage, I mean, and like Del Toro and Yorks, and there's a lot of these younger. I mean, I think what's interesting is how Nike is losing market share, and I don't mean that as a negative thing to Nike.
Yeah.
Nike obviously have mad respect for Nike. We love Nike, but there's now, you know, Nike was just everything for a while, right? And now you have Adidas, and now you have K-Swiss, and you have Fila, and you know, Kappa's coming hard. I mean, they don't have footwear really popping yet, but it's gonna, you know, obviously one of our investors in Wanderset is the foundation, which has Kappa, and I know they're going to be doing footwear. And we met with Champion. We're going to be doing a Champion collab shoe. Champion's doing footwear. Under Armour, obviously, we're not doing anything with them, but I mean, clearly the sneaker market is diversified, which is good. I mean, competition is good, and Nike is going to continue to be the 800-pound gorilla. There's no question, but it's interesting. It's an interesting time in sneaker history with so many different brands, and obviously what Adidas has done has been amazing in terms of their just, you know, I mean, they were obviously very, very smart to sign with Kanye and do that deal. That was a winner for them.
Did you see that coming? Like coming off of like Kanye being at Nike and then going to Adidas? Like, did you?
For sure.
Yeah. For
sure. I mean, I don't know who was saying this the other day, but I think it was Will was saying, he's like, yo, you called it so early. Like, even before, I was like, you know, when Adidas bought Reebok, which I don't know if that was necessarily the smartest business move or whatever. Yeah. I started spending some time with Adidas because they were now in Boston. They had moved. They had a wing of that became.
Okay, got it. Because they had bought Puma.
No, okay, they bought Reebok.
They bought Reebok.
Right, and they moved a big portion of Adidas because Adidas took over their basketball section. So now the Reebok office in Boston was like half Adidas. It still is now.
Okay.
And so I started going in there, and I was like, yo, Adidas, like, because sneakers design like 5 years out.
Yeah.
And I'm like telling people, I'm like, Adidas is bringing heat.
They got some heat.
It's gonna come, watch. And I'm like, they're gonna give them a run for the money. And everyone's like, no, they're losing market share. The Reebok deal's killing them. They don't know what to do with it. I'm like, trust me, dude. And then, but I mean, look, Pharrell Pharrell sold more sneakers than Kanye.
Wow.
For Adidas. I mean, net, it's like, and again, I'm not pitting one against the other, both
sure.
my friends, but net, what Pharrell has done for that company, the smartest thing they did was sign Pharrell.
Yeah.
I mean, even more than Kanye, as much as like that was a very, very noisy move, and what Kanye produced were
yeah.
amazing shoes, right? Yeah. You have to still produce quality. They didn't just sign like Pharrell and Kanye and then have them put out shit. They put out ill stuff.
Yeah.
So many times sneaker companies sign rappers, they put out garbage. Yeah. Right? These guys put out like there was real thought put into what they put out.
And I know that just seeing them the way that they think, Kanye and Pharrell, they're thinkers. Yeah. And their name and everything that has to do with their image is so important that they can't put out shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they have to put out heat, or else, the world would just immediately backlash on them. Right.
But I mean, there's some other hip hop artists
that just put out whatever.
I mean, and I'm not going to say names, but that remain relevant and big, and are some of the biggest ones. But they still put out crappy ass sneakers, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, but there's certain people whose art translates into different mediums, and some that don't, or some that just didn't take the time.
Where do you think you see the future of sneakers being sold online? You see companies like Flight Club or Riff LA or Stadium Goods making a lot of money. And this is now with the reseller market, the second tier market. Where do you see the future of online sneaker sales?
I mean, well, look, online sales are the future, period, right? I mean, I saw a thing in the New York Times about like stores were empty on Black Friday, right? Yeah. Every year, less and less. So basically, there's gonna be two types of stores online, right? There's gonna be Amazon and Walmart and everyone else, right? And everyone else is gonna be a small piece of the pie. But it's going to be a big, small piece of the pie, but it's still small, right?
Got it.
Because Amazon is a commodity-based retailer. Amazon sells stuff it's price-based, it's whatever. You're going to be able to get all your staple sneakers there, or whatever.
Yeah, it's aggregation-based.
Right. But if you want a site that's going to sell stuff that is unique, there's going to be enough people out there who don't want a particularly fashion, which is a qualitative experience, which is an experience about how you feel as a human being, about what it means to be, like, what do these sneakers say to me? They just don't, the sneakerheads don't necessarily want to buy their shit on Amazon. Yeah. They'll buy it on eBay because it's being traded, whatever. That's still a sterile environment, but it's a different thing because it's a reseller market. But people who want to get they want the full story, and that's where Wanderset comes in. We're going to tell the story behind the brand. Yeah. Even if Amazon does that, it's still Amazon that still has like the Cuisinart and the refrigerator and the snow shovel and the it is what it is. It's a massive store, and so it's not like the sneakerhead and the fashion connoisseur is still going to want to buy their fashion on a fashion website, and it has to. You can't just be any fashion website. The ones that are going to win are the ones that are going to be the ones that can really connect to people on a personal level. Yeah. And that's why I think what's really cool about Wanderset is that I'm trying to think. Do any of our set members have footwear brands? We have
myself.
Yeah. You're one of our set members. You have a brand coming out, sneaker brand. We have Cash Warren on the site. Cash Warren's Jessica Alba's husband. One of the founders of Honest Company, $1 billion entrepreneurs and the new rock stars. We're really focusing a lot on entrepreneurs, on people behind the scenes. He's got a sock brand. we have Andrew White's, who's he's got a shoe that I think is coming out with a collab. I don't remember what the brand is, but it's a shoe, not a sneaker. But Andrew White's, if you don't know, is a celebrity stylist, just named one of the top 10 best dressed people in the world by GQ. He's on our site. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, we have something on Wanderset called The Set, and The Set are just people we think are really cool. Yeah. They're mostly people who have their own consumer brands. They're influencers in their own right. We have people like Trevor Andrews, aka Gucci Ghost. We have people like Ariel G, who's J Balvin's stylist. We have people like Rob Garcia, did Anwar, Javier Laval, Android Home. There's one of our influencers with a sneaker brand, right? Yep. So, but we generally try to have people behind the scenes in the culture. We feel like the rappers and musicians have kind of been beat to death in terms of everyone's kind of trying to, or really famous actors. Yeah. And it's like the authenticity is not there. Everyone's like, okay, they're getting paid for this. So, I mean, we have people like Smoke Perp, who's someone coming up in the world, obviously Gucci Mane, people like that. But generally, like most of the people we're dealing with are people who are in other creative fields, and that are people like Develop, who are behind the scenes, who produce for J Balvin. Yeah. Or like Justin Logan, who's a guy who is a fashion guy, but what he does is he customizes, and good looks for making the introduction, by the way. He customizes, high-end pieces and things like that. So they're all really interesting cats who are doing behind-the-scenes stuff. Yeah. And I think those are the stories that people want to hear about, because everyone's always chasing the same guys. And I think you're going to see that translate into sneaker culture, like we saw today at K-Swiss. Yeah, I mean, especially with what K-Swiss is doing with Gary Vee, I thought was just brilliant in terms of what the future is. What I would love to see is, I would love to see more stories on the resellers. Yeah. And I would love to hear more interviews and listen to more stories of those kids in line. Yeah. Because I think that, like let's say, for example, let's say we had cameras rolling at an undefeated release, and there's 400 or 500 kids outside, and someone interviewing them. Yeah. And really understanding their stories. What motivates these guys, right? What motivates them outside of because of course they're trying to resell and make money and flip or whatever, the shoes, but I just believe that there's so many stories that are not told yet. Yeah. Which I think could be really cool. What does the sneaker mean to them, right? Like, what is that feeling like? Like, even today, like we were looking at the K-Swiss stuff. K-Swiss is getting a lot of good plugs today, but we saw they're bringing some heat. They're definitely Kappa, K-Swiss, Fila. These are going to be names that we're going to be seeing a lot. Champion, a lot of in 2018. I'm definitely, from what I'm seeing and the stuff I was seeing at Complex Con. Yeah. But I mean, like, even that feeling you get, because like I used to rock, like we used to call them K-Switties back in high school. I used to rock K-Swiss and Fila, like, those were like those were my shoes like back then, and then obviously and a lot of Adidas Gazelles. I had like fucking every color Gazelles, like the mint green Gazelles. We used to go to Montreal to get the Gazelles because there was you couldn't get the soft tongue Gazelles in the U.S. Oh wow! So we'd drive all the way the fuck to Montreal because we wanted because we wanted the soft tongue. You could only get the hard tongue ones. There was this one store in South Boston called Jonesy's, and they would like get them from Montreal. They were basically like backdooring them. They'd go up to Montreal and get them and bring them down. Wow! Because like the kids in Boston only wanted the ones with the soft tongue, and they weren't available in the U.S. market. Yeah, I remember Boston's just like their affinity. I mean, it makes sense now why Boston's affinity. Like when I remember when I met Air Rev. Yeah. And Air Rev took me to his house, and I saw his collection. It's one of the first times, like this is like 15 years ago or more. And to see his collection, I was just like, wow. Yeah, well, like DJ Khan, I don't know if you know, like Khan and Bobito used to do stuff together. He had like an Illa sneaker collection. But the crazy thing is, the one sneaker company that wasn't in Boston, and Nike wasn't even that big, as big like back then, was Adidas. But Boston was all about Adidas. They used to call B's and threes, right? So your Boston hat and you have your Adidas three stripes. It was like, I remember in my high school they used to have one day like, don't believe the Nikes. and it was like if you wore Nike to high school, you got beat up. and like I remember my boy Mark was so afraid. He wore Nikes that he went and he played soccer, and he went to his locker and got his Adidas cleats, and he walked down the hallway stomping around making noise like this, wearing his Adidas cleats so he wouldn't get beat up.
Don't believe the Nikes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they had posters up. People put up made photocopies like, don't believe in Nikes. Don't come to school wearing Nikes if you want to live.
Oh my God, that's incredible. And Greg, so now that you see like this reseller market just being like absolutely, literally it's in the over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see that playing out in the web and in terms of, you know, because what I'm hearing with the kids now is that it's just really difficult for them to get sneakers, these coveted releases. It's a very different game now.
Well, I think sorry to cut you off, but I think part of one of Nike's problems, frankly, in terms of, and like we all know that like you know whatever Nike's having some issues in terms of like Adidas and all these people are coming up right now, is they stuck with this old model where they tried to control sales channels too much, and the internet, it's the World Wide Web for a reason, has changed that. Whereas like, I remember like we couldn't open Nike as an account at Karmaloop. We never opened them as an account. We backdoored them when we had them and whatever. Every other sneaker company, Adidas, everyone else was like, you know, it took time. Adidas was the last one, was willing to work with us, and Nike's like, no, because we want to control the sales channels. And the fact is like, the reality is the web and the reseller market has changed that, and I think even when you look at boutique aggregation and what Farfetch does, which is Farfetch has basically allowed boutiques now to sell Y3s and all this stuff. Adidas, no one can control the web. Originally, the first reaction, I'm sure, to Farfetch, and I don't know this to be the fact, was like, you know, these sneaker companies probably got on the phone with like, to these boutiques were like, yo, like, what are you doing? Like, this is your exclusive product. Like, we want to limit where it can be sold. Yeah. Like, we're selling it to your boutique, we're going to pull your account or whatever. But somehow they overcame that, because now you can get, and the fact is that it's about the thing that's going to change it is you're not going to be able to control the sales channels through that. The way that the sneaker companies are going to have to differentiate themselves, and they're going to do it is as manufacturing quality and ability to turn around and create product quicker and quicker, the way the Zara's doing stuff where they can see something on the runway and make it in 4 hours. It's in their store in like 3 days. Yeah. It's gonna go back to the creativity. It's not gonna be about like Nike's gonna keep the Jordans off of this or whatever. It's gonna be about scarcity. It's about colorways. It's gonna be about making lots of little quick runs, quick strikes and runs, and giving them to certain boutiques, and they're gonna get out. They're gonna get sold where they get sold. Yeah. But having that limited amount of product and then making new ones. And so they're gonna have to have more ideas and quicker ideas and more collabs and more interesting concepts where it's not just an athlete where you can just sell tons of Jordans, but like the Gary V shoe or whatever, or collaborating with lots of little brands. And it's gonna be harder for the sneaker companies in some ways, because they're gonna have to create. You're never gonna be able to sit still. Yeah. But the idea of being able to block channels is going to be very, very hard. It's just going to get harder.
Yeah, I'm interested as well, because, you know, it's like with Jordan, Aleli just dropped a Jordan for females, and you would see that I was talking with her attorney last week, and just, you know, thinking about like typically, and it goes back almost to your strategy with Wanderset. Typically, you would not see a brand like Jordan do a collaboration with somebody that doesn't have millions of followers and super mega star. And for Jordan as a brand to have such success with someone that doesn't have that kind of following, and it's still the collaboration, the Jordans that she made were incredible. We were at the Undefeated launch here, which was a kind of like a swap meet style inspired, and literally the kids were just, it was hundreds of kids, pandemonium outside, trying to get in for her release. Mm-hmm. And it's just a testament to like what we were talking about earlier, which is that like what Homie said, which was content and context. Yeah. It was like incredible content, incredible context, and it worked.
And I think it's the other thing is like it's two things. It's like it's about engagement, right? So it's not the size of the person; it's the how engaged is their audience and how like into like
whatever they're doing.
Like if Kim Kardashian, like I think she did do a shoe at one point, right? I think I don't know necessarily if that would work. Maybe if she like worked with Kanye and they did something really creative, really thing. But if she just like threw her name on a like they used to do with what's her name, Candy Shoes, what Jessica Simpson did, where it was like the old model of
just
like,
endorsement,
endorsement. That ain't gonna work, right? And especially the bigger the star is, the less believable it is, right? Kanye's the biggest star in the world, one of the biggest stars in the world, but he clearly like designed that shoe and he put his thought into it and it reflected who he was as a person. But generally, I think for every Kanye, there can be lots of little like, Gary V's now Gary V's a huge guy in his world, but you would have never thought that would have worked if you told half the people. I would have known right away it worked. To me, it made total sense. But the point is that he's got this fanatical following and he's got a persona and he put it into that shoe. And I think the shoe companies need to go beyond the athlete, beyond the megastar, and like you said, it's context and story and it's thought and quality. You know what I mean? And I think if they don't do that, then they, you can sign the biggest athlete in the world and it's not necessarily gonna. It's not every kid wants to grow up to be. I mean, frankly, like entrepreneurs are the new rock stars. A lot of people want to be, you can't, let's be honest. Yeah. Unless you're like a few musicians, you ain't making money in the music business anymore. Yeah. You are not. Like the rappers, most of the rappers in those videos nowadays, like when, are that's rented stuff. That's the studio, that's the label stuff. Yeah. And they're not putting that, they're not like Chance, who was smart and kept independent and putting all the money in his own pocket. Yeah. And so it's a lifestyle that isn't necessarily which is it's portrayed on TV or videos and stuff like that. But it's not real. Yeah, but a lot of young kids now see business and see entrepreneurship, and being an athlete still you make a lot of money and that's great. But they which is good. It's good to see the Jordan and the sneaker sort of. Obviously African American culture drove sneaker culture. Run DMC, DMC, obviously someone who I know personally is a good friend. We're doing a bunch of collaboration work with DMC on Wanderset. They put the Adidas shell toe on the map. Yeah. Part of a lot of young African American kids. Part of what the sneaker represented, the expensive sneaker represented, was this idea of becoming the next Jordan or the next DMC, and that was like a way out, right? Yeah. And it's like, so sneakers really represented cultural upward mobility to a lot of people. Very much so. And so I think when you look at these younger kids, though, they may want to be Steve Stout instead, right? Young African American kids who just or Gary Vee or Gary Vee. I mean, it doesn't the color. They all want to be Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, or the next Zuckerberg, right? I mean, the point is that which hopefully more and more we should be able to look up to whoever we want to look up to, regardless of what their race or background is, and we want all the young kids, no matter their background, to be looking up to people who can have a sustainable lifestyle. And the music industry is not necessarily the one that's going to get you rich. I mean, even if you look at where Pharrell has made a lot of his money, it's production, it's movie scores, it's design, he's put out books, he's done. He's a Renaissance man, right? Yeah. He's a business guy, right? Yeah. That's who he really is, and he was your partner at Karmaloop TV. Yeah. How was that experience working with Pharrell? Because I wouldn't. I don't know Pharrell personally, so I would look at Pharrell from the outside, and I do still. Yeah. And I look at him as just like a super artsy, quiet, creative genius, right? Yeah. But earlier you were telling me he's a businessman. Yeah. So I wouldn't see that side from the outside, but I'm even more excited
to get to know him more because he is a business guy.
He's more like I'd say like a business visionary because, you know, when you think of the term businessman, you think of someone who's like trying to get their last penny. Like, I definitely think he's an artist first, and money's the second motivation. Yeah. And like, you know, there's certain things with BBC and stuff that I know that he definitely took shorts on cash for quality and stuff he did with Nego and whatever. So he's like more of a business visionary, and I'd like to think of myself in that way. Like, I'm not trying to make every last penny. Like, I would rather it be the quality and stuff. I mean, working with him, obviously, the man is a gentleman. Like, you know, he is who he is, and he's a really good person. And like, we used to go places all the time, like, and like he would just stop and talk to everyone, and like he never, you know, he took the time. I remember one time we were at the Thompson Hotel. He was like on a phone call, and it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. There was this like old French dude like sitting across from us. He was drunk, and he's like, "You're famous." He didn't like it, and he kept trying to like talk to Pharrell. And Pharrell was like on the phone, like, and he was like, and I kept being like trying to push the guy off, and like this dude was like bugging, like Pharrell's trying to make a phone call, right? Yeah. But when Pharrell got off the call, he still went over and like went to, like, the guy's like trying to get on the couch with him and stuff. And still was like, hey, shook his hand and was like super friendly to him and stuff. Like, it was just the funniest scene because this dude was just kept being like, like coming at him and stuff, you know? And you assume like most people would get off the phone and like try to leave. You know? But like, you know, I mean, working with him was amazing, and you know, and just, you know, I missed the fact, obviously, like we used to talk on the phone a lot and just have like brainstorm on ideas and stuff, and you know, I think that like he's just like, there's very few genuinely good people in entertainment. Like, he's a genuinely good person. He's a fucking beast at Mario Kart, let me tell you. I remember being like at his house in Miami, and he lived in like this villain's lair on top of like, you know, he lives in LA now, but it was like literally like a bubble on the top of the roof of this building was his house. Oh my God. Like, and like, he'd be just slaying all these people in Mario Kart, and I'd be like, none of these, because you know, like playing like, you know, all these people all over the world, and I'm like, none of these people realize they're getting their ass whooped by Pharrell in Mario Kart right now.
What's his screen name?
I don't even remember.
Okay, that would be great. We'll keep that secret.
Yeah, I'm sure he changed it. Probably something around SpongeBob. I don't know.
Oh my God.
But no, it was a real pleasure working with him, and you know, we worked on a bunch of different projects, and you know, obviously we were the biggest reseller of BBC for a long time, and you know, working with him on the TV stuff was amazing. I mean, you know,
because your background, Greg, like you've worked with Kanye on trying to buy back Karmaloop. I know that you said that you have like one of two of the original Yeezys signed, or two of the only in the world.
Yeah, well, I don't know anymore. When I went bankrupt, I sold them. I had to sell my Shepard Fairey art. I mean, look, that's the truth, bro. I lost millions and millions of dollars, and I did that because I paid back all these people who I had basically signed loans for. I could have filed for personal bankruptcy. I didn't do that. I chose not to, and I liquidated. I had this amazing Shepard Fairey mural. It's called the Selkoe mural. It's hanging in Dubai now. The name of the mural is the Selkoe mural. He named it that. A lot of people don't know. I bailed Shepard Fairey out of jail. I still have the bail slip. Someone wanted to buy that for me. I was like, nah, I'm keeping that. His real name is Frank, by the way. Sorry, Shep. Frank Shepard Fairey. Shepard is his middle name. But yeah. No, I mean, even like Damon Dash was involved. It was me, Damon, and I'll tell you, Dame Dash is another guy. Like, you know, we both went through some tough times, and he was very supportive of me when I went through my bankruptcy stuff. And he's also, you know, he obviously lost Aaliyah, and like, he's another guy who's like, he's got this persona, but like, you know, he's just such a good, he's also another really good person, even though like, you know, people, you know, people think one way about him, or he's like hard or whatever. He's just a good dude. He's got these two little pugs, and his son Boogie is like this. He brought up his kids amazingly well. They're just like these really smart, really well, they're all young little entrepreneurs and stuff. So I mean, he was another person. Steve Aoki was someone I used to spend a lot of time with, another really great, down to earth guy. Like, so I mean, you know, being at Karmaloop, I got to meet all these really, you know, amazing people. I got to meet Oprah. That was cool. You know,
Madonna.
I met Madonna. She had this brand called Mafia. We were talking about potentially selling that on Karmaloop. You know, these are all people that I got to come in contact with. I met Obama. I went to the White House. I was one of the top 35 entrepreneurs under 35.
Oh my God!
I got invited to the White House. Mark Echo and I went to the White House. It was pretty dope. Tony Tsai from Zappos. It was the guys from Summit Series.
Okay.
You know, what's his name? Blake from Tom Shoes. It was all of us. We all went to the White House. It was dope.
Wow. Now, Greg, like, you know, you were talking about the car. You know, you met Virgil as well when he was really young. A lot of these people, you know, Cuddy, probably the first performance was in your, like he said it on tape. It was a purse one, I think it was for like $500.
Yep.
Like you booked Cuddy.
I booked Cuddy for, it was 1,000. Will reminded me it was 1,000.
Okay.
I always said 500. He's like, nah, man, it was 1,000.
1,000.
Yeah, he played our store opening party for $1,000. And like, I gave him a hat that he wore on stage for like 2 years. You know, I mean, Cuddy was the homie, like, and like, you know,
I know it was a chance, and then you did the college tours. But where I'm leading to the question is, for the audience, because I'm also fascinated by just people in general.
Yeah.
If you had to put like a string or like a tying line between all these different people that you've met early, and where you've seen some of them grow to be this massive success, what are some of those characteristics in those people? Like, let's say a Virgil or meeting a Cuddy early. Is there, or are people just the same, and then some of them, or even a Pharrell, like you probably met early?
I mean, to be clear, like I don't know Virgil at all. I mean, I probably met him once early, and when we were doing the Karmaloop, when Kanye and I were trying to buy Karmaloop, you know, I remember I talked to him on the phone briefly about it, and he would actually be my relay when I was like, yo, I got to get in touch with Kanye right now, like, and he was nice enough to hit him, and he got right back to me. He would get him to get right back to me and stuff, but these other guys I know you know, really well and did work with and stuff. So I don't, you know, I admire Virgil and I admire what, but I can't really comment on him. But I mean, my guess is he works really hard. Yeah. That's
and not just him. I mean, just in general. Like, let's say if you had, is there any tying line or characteristics between multiple different people that you've seen something in them in different people that you're like, wow, I saw something special, and now they made it.
Yeah. Well, like I think that one of the things I want to say about Kanye that I think is interesting too is that like he's a really nice guy, and I think he's really misunderstood. And like, you know, I'm not really in much contact with him anymore or anything like that, but like, and even at the time, like when we were trying to buy Karma, it was like I got back in contact with him. He was trying to help me out, and this was, you know, from kind of earlier days. But I remember like early on, he was playing at UMass in Boston, and he came by the Karmaloop office and he gave tickets to all the staff and stuff. And Don C, by the way, is like another real gentleman, and that's Don, and that was like,
love,
you know, Don was the homie, and like they came by the store Karmaloop, and you know, they used to let us post what he would get from Karmaloop and stuff. And I think, like, you know, someone like Pharrell, I mean, like, I think the thing that I see, like, in all those guys that are very success's is that they constantly reinvent themselves, and they're not afraid to take risks and do something new. And like look at all the changes that Kanye's made, and you get a lot of negative. You gotta be tough too. You get people say a lot of awful things. You read the stuff that people say about Pharrell on Hypebeast. It's awful, but it's like, dude, all of you worship this guy, right? Yeah. I mean, the stuff people have said about me and like how once you get big enough, when Karma was big enough, I mean, the stuff I used to hear, the stories you used to be like, I didn't do that. That's not true. It's like when you're in the public eye, and I was not in the public eye compared to what these guys go through. I mean, half the world hates you for it because they want your success, right? So you have to be really internal. You have to have internal strength. There's a book by Emerson called Self-Reliance, which is like I'm like really like into all the transcendental authors like Thoreau and Emerson and Louisa May Alcott and all the ones that came out of Concord, Massachusetts. I definitely recommend kids reading their stuff because it's like definitely, and you know, it's about self-reliance, and like, you know, there's a famous Rudyard Kipling poem too about like if basically when all the shit hits the fan, you gotta stand on your own. Right. And so I think it's like, you know, you have to have, and like everything that I went through, going through the bankruptcy and the stuff that people said about me, and there were certain things I couldn't talk publicly because people didn't realize, like, by the time, like, when Karmaloop wasn't shipping orders, I had no control over the business. For a year, I had already lost control of the business. But I couldn't publicly say that, so I was still the face because I was
Everyone knew you.
And also I had all these restrictions and all this stuff, and I was trying not to get out of deals and trying to not get sued by this deal because I had basically non-disparagement and all the stuff in corporate world you have all the stuff you can't say, right? So I had to kind of just sit. It's like sit there and getting punched in the face and you can't fight back, right? And it's like, and then I got sick and almost died after that, right? And so it's like, so you have to be like driven internally, and you have to have, and I have like an incredible wife and I have 2 incredible kids, and at the end of the day, none of this shit really matters, right? Even as much as I love sneakers, they don't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is your health and your life, right? And like the sneakers are just a reflection of like what makes you happy, and it's fun and it's great. And I love sneakers, and you love sneakers, but you and I were talking about this in the car. At the end of the day, like, you have a beautiful wife and a baby, and it's really about you got to be happy and try to be happy, And I went through some dark times, like, you lose a business. Karmaloop was my baby. I spent 17 years and then I lost it. Then I got back on my feet. I met some really amazing entrepreneur named Paul Judge. He and I started another business together called Look Live. Business still exists. Got into Y Combinator. Y Combinator is sort of considered the Harvard of incubators. 16,000 people apply, only 100 people got in. They let me in. I didn't know, like, would they not let me in? Like, they were like, no, because of what you did. Like, we want people like you who've been through this, right? And then that business was cranking. Next thing I know, I'm in the intensive care unit, the cardiac intensive care unit, and then I'm in the hospital for a month with this weird genetic disorder that I found out that my grandmother had died of, called sarcoidosis. It's what Bernie Mac died of.
Oh my gosh.
And was super sick, almost died, and it was like I had to leave my other business. So I had just gotten that. Within 2 weeks after Karmaloop, I had already started another business. I went to a barbecue at Ben Horowitz's house in Palo Alto. My boy Divine, who's this amazing guy. This dude's about to be a huge entrepreneur, does tons of stuff with Ben Horowitz. Basically had me go to this party. I met this guy Paul. We started another business. I was getting my life together, and next thing I know, I go into the hospital. I'm getting slow heart rates on my watch. I think it's nothing. Next thing I know, I'm in the hospital for a month. So those kind of things, that gives you perspective on life, and on what's important,
And me and you talk about it all the time. This is just gravy.
Yeah.
The business, the money, sneakers, all that stuff is just gravy, and it's all about life and friendships. And
definitely,
I appreciate you, Greg. You're still a mentor to me. I've still learned so much from you every single day. And Wanderset is rocking through the roof. It's going to be another amazing success, and it's going to be because people, like what you've done in 30 to 90 days is revolutionary.
I can't even believe it,
because
though.
of how much.
Thank you, everyone. I love you. Wanderset family worldwide.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's because of all all of those hundreds of millions of dollars of sales. You've affected people's lives and their families, and you've provided, because of your idea with Karmaloop, you've provided for people's families and lives. So thank you for that. And
appreciate that.
We do something on the show, which is your current rotation. And real quickly, what's your top 3? Like, what's in your rotation right now?
My top 3 sneakers.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, I've been wearing the York's footwear. Lou keeps me fresh with Fila's every month. Every month I get a new pair of Fila's. So I've been wearing a lot of Fila's, and then what else have I been wearing? I have the Adidas, the Pharrell Stan Smiths I've been wearing.
Sick.
So
yeah, those are it, man.
Yeah.
That's it. It's like that's what I like about that is it really tells a lot about somebody, like what they're wearing, when they're traveling. They want to be comfortable. And now, really, I think with Wanderset and some of the collabs that we got going on are going to be incredible. We're going to change the game with those.
I was ready to rattle off my top 3 hip hop.
That's definitely. What are those? All right. What's your top 3 hip hop?
I mean, well, right now, what have I been listening to? Definitely some Balvin.
Yep.
Definitely some 2 Chainz. Hermitude is good. Trying to think what else. There's one other jam I was listening to. It was like some Swedish group that like Will put me on. Pineapple.
Okay.
Which is and this group Pineapple City, which is Clinton Sparks' artist.
Okay, dope.
She's dope. So some good stuff.
And I'm excited. I know that they're filming you now for a TV show on the making, you know, of what happened at Karmaloop and then now with Wanderset.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, and for me, it's just a pleasure to have you on board, man. You keep inspiring me to be great and to learn from you, Greg. So much continued success and blessings, brother.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you for being
having me on.
Kicking it with Sneaker Steve.
It was a pleasure.
Woo! Ow!
It was a lot of fun.